The massive Valdurian ship entered Earth's orbit without warning. It was 3 times larger than the biggest human spacecraft ever built, its hull shimmering with an odd blue light that scientists couldn't explain. World leaders gathered in emergency meetings while citizens everywhere watched their skies with a mixture of fear and wonder. Commander Zex Lorith stood on the bridge of his vessel, his tall, slender form towering over his officers. The Valdurians had ruled most of the galaxy for 10,000 years. With skin that resembled polished silver and eyes that glowed purple, they were as beautiful as they were feared. "Prepare the welcome message," Zex Lorith ordered. "Let us see how these humans respond." The message was simple. Earth was being invited to join the Galactic Council, a gathering of intelligent species that governed cosmic affairs. After decades of debate, humans accepted the invitation. 6 months later, John Miller stepped onto the enormous space station called Convergence. As Earth's first official ambassador, he felt the weight of responsibility on his shoulders. A former Navy officer with a calm demeanor and thoughtful eyes, John had been chosen for his ability to stay level-headed in new situations. "Ambassador Miller, welcome to Convergence," said a Valdurian diplomat who introduced himself as Kelvon. "The council meeting begins in 1 hour. We have reserved a special seat for you near the front, as is customary for new species." John smiled politely. "Thank you for the honor, but I would prefer a seat in the back row, if possible." Kelvon's purple eyes flickered with confusion. "The back? But honored guests sit near the council leaders." "I understand," John replied. "However, I would be more comfortable observing from the back for my first session." The Valdurian seemed puzzled but nodded. "As you wish." John wasn't the first human to make this request. During preliminary meetings, every human representative had chosen seats at the back of rooms or positions against walls. The Valdurians found this behavior strange, but hadn't given it much thought until now. The council chamber was enormous, with rising tiers of seats arranged in a half circle. Representatives from 247 different species filled the room with a cacophony of sounds, smells, and colors. Some floated in special tanks, others required breathing apparatus, and some didn't seem to have physical bodies at all. John took his seat in the back row. From here, he could see everything, every entrance and exit, every species, every interaction. He noted which delegates seemed friendly with each other and which kept their distance. He watched the Valdurians, always at the center, always commanding attention. His assistant, Lisa Gardner, stood against the wall behind him. As a former space marine, she valued this position that gave her a clear view of the entire chamber. Her eyes constantly scanned for potential threats, an old habit from her military days. "They're watching us," she whispered to John, nodding subtly toward a group of Valdurians who were indeed studying the humans with interest. "Let them watch," John replied calmly. "We're here to learn." Commander Zex Lorith entered the chamber last, his silver skin gleaming under the lights. As the highest-ranking Valdurian present, he took the most central, exposed position, a place of honor in their culture. From there, he could be seen by all, but couldn't see everyone without turning. John noted this vulnerability with interest. The meeting proceeded with formal welcomes and introductions. When it was Earth's turn, John stood and delivered a brief, respectful speech. He spoke of cooperation and mutual learning, of humanity's hope to contribute to the greater galactic community. Later, at the reception that followed, Zex Lorith approached John directly. "Ambassador Miller, your words were well chosen," the commander said. "But I am curious, why do you humans always choose to sit in the back?" John smiled. "Old habit, I suppose. We like to get the full picture before diving in." Zex Lorith's eyes narrowed slightly. "Interesting. In our culture, the most powerful take center stage. Different perspectives make the galaxy interesting, don't they?" John replied. The commander nodded, but as he walked away, he signaled subtly to one of his officers. Something about these humans warranted further study. Lisa Gardner stood at her usual spot against the back wall of the council chamber, watching the proceedings with sharp eyes. 3 weeks had passed since Earth joined the Galactic Council, and she had not relaxed her vigilance for a moment. Her hand rested near her hip, close to where her weapon would normally be, though firearms weren't allowed in the council chambers. Lisa had served 15 years in the Space Marines before being selected for diplomatic security. Her short brown hair and athletic build marked her as military, but it was her eyes that gave her away. Always moving, always assessing. A young Voldurian diplomat approached her during a brief recess. He was shorter than most of his kind, his silver skin not yet fully hardened with age. "Security Officer Gardner, correct?" he asked. "I am Tev Moran, Junior Diplomatic Attaché." Lisa nodded politely but didn't shift her position. "I notice you always stand here, against this wall," Tev Moran said, "even when seats are available." Lisa smiled slightly. "Just good tactics." Tactics. The Voldurian seemed genuinely curious. "Clear sightlines to all entrances. Nobody behind me. Quick access to both Ambassador Miller and the main exit," Lisa explained simply. Tev Moran's purple eyes widened. "But we are allies now. There are no threats here." Lisa just shrugged. Old habits. Unbeknownst to her, the young diplomat made detailed notes about their conversation afterward. His report was flagged and sent directly to Commander Zex Lorith's intelligence team. Meanwhile, Daniel Carter was settling into his new laboratory on Convergence Station. As one of Earth's leading xenobiologists, he had been granted special permission to study various species, including the Voldurians. His lab was filled with data screens, tissue samples, and cultural artifacts from dozens of worlds. Daniel was a quiet man who preferred research to social gatherings. His dark-rimmed glasses slid down his nose as he bent over his work, studying Voldurian biological records. "Fascinating," he muttered to himself. "No natural predators in their entire evolutionary history." The door to his lab slid open as John Miller entered. The ambassador looked tired after a long day of negotiations. "Any breakthroughs?" John asked, dropping into a chair. Daniel pushed his glasses back into place. "Maybe. The Voldurians evolved as apex predators on their homeworld. Nothing ever hunted them." "How does that help us?" John reached for a cup of coffee that Daniel offered. "It explains why they find our behavior so strange," Daniel said. "Look at their physiology. Eyes facing forward only, no peripheral vision. They never needed to watch their backs because nothing ever attacked them from behind." John thought about this. So when they take center stage, it's not just cultural, it's biological, Daniel finished. They literally don't understand the concept of watching your back because they never had to. Across the station, Commander Zex Lorith reviewed the latest reports on human behavior. Every human on the station consistently chose positions with walls behind them. In dining areas, they selected corner tables. In meetings, they took the back row. Even in casual settings, they positioned themselves to see doors and exits. "This cannot be coincidence," Zex Lorith told his chief intelligence officer, Krivex. "There must be strategic significance." Krivex, a female Voldurian with unusually dark skin, nodded thoughtfully. "Perhaps they are naturally cautious due to their brief history of space travel. Or perhaps they hide something," Zex Lorith suggested. "I want more information. Assign observers to study Earth's public spaces, schools, transportation, eating establishments. Let's see if this behavior exists only in diplomatic settings or if it's more deeply ingrained." Krivex bowed slightly. "It shall be done, Commander." That evening, John Miller sat with Lisa and Daniel in the human quarters common room. The space was small but comfortable, deliberately designed to feel like an Earth cafe. "They're watching us more closely now," Lisa reported. "Especially the security team. I counted 3 different Voldurians taking notes on my movements today." John sipped his coffee thoughtfully. Daniel has a theory about why they find us so interesting. As Daniel explained his findings about Voldurian evolution, Lisa's expression grew serious. "So they've never experienced being prey," she said. They don't understand defensive positioning. Exactly, Daniel nodded. And that might be the biggest difference between our species. None of them noticed the small recording device hidden in the artificial plant beside their table, transmitting every word directly to Commander Zexloreth's private quarters. Kryvex sat in her private study, surrounded by screens showing various scenes from Earth. The Valdurian Science Guild had collected thousands of hours of footage from public places across the human home planet. Schools, restaurants, subway cars, parks, and offices filled her screens. She tapped a stylus against her silver chin, her purple eyes narrowed in concentration. The pattern was unmistakable now. In school classrooms, many students chose seats in the back row when given the choice. In restaurants, humans preferred tables against walls. On public transportation, they gravitated toward seats where they could see everyone else. Such a waste of valuable positions, she muttered to herself. A soft chime announced the arrival of Commander Zexloreth. He entered with his usual confident stride, towering over Kryvex even when she stood to greet him. "Show me what you have found," he said without preamble. Kryvex gestured to the screens. "The behavior is consistent across their entire species, Commander. It appears to be instinctive rather than trained." Zexloreth watched as she played various clips showing humans consistently choosing positions with good visibility and protected backs. In Valdurian schools, every student fights for front positions, Zexloreth noted, to show confidence, to be noticed by teachers. Yet human children often prefer to hide at the back. "Not hiding, Commander," Kryvex corrected. "Observing. There's a difference." The commander's eyes flashed with interest. "Explain." "I believe it relates to what the xenobiologist Carter discovered about our evolutionary differences. Humans evolved as both predator and prey. They were hunted before they became hunters, and those instincts remain." Zexloreth considered this. "So when Ambassador Miller chooses the back row, he's not being submissive," Kryvex finished. "He's being tactical." The commander walked closer to one of the screens showing the human restaurant. "Their military must understand this advantage. I want you to speak with humans who study their own behavior. Do it discreetly, under the guise of cultural exchange." Kryvex bowed slightly. "I already have an appointment with a human psychology professor tomorrow. Susan Morris from their Harvard University is visiting the station as part of the scientific delegation." On the other side of Convergence Station, John Miller met with Alan Park, Earth's military attaché. Alan was a stout man with a soldier's bearing and a strategist's mind. "The Valdurians are definitely interested in us," John said, keeping his voice low despite being in his private quarters, "particularly in how we position ourselves." Alan nodded. "My security team found 3 new surveillance devices in the human section yesterday. They're not even being subtle about it anymore." "Daniel thinks it's because they evolved differently," John explained. "They've always been apex predators, never had to watch their backs." "That tracks," Alan said. "In their culture, the most important person stands in the middle of the room, back exposed to everyone. It's a show of trust and power. But for us, that's just being careless," John finished. The next day, Kryvex sat across from Professor Susan Morris in the station's Cultural Exchange Center. Susan was a tall woman with kind eyes and graying hair pulled back in a simple style. "Thank you for agreeing to this interview, Professor," Kryvex said politely. "I'm researching comparative species psychology." Susan smiled. "Happy to help. What aspect of human psychology interests you?" "I've noticed humans often position themselves differently than Valdurians in social settings," Kryvex said carefully. "For instance, you chose that seat with your back to the wall, whereas I would naturally prefer to sit in the center of the room." Susan laughed. "Ah, situational awareness. It's quite basic to human psychology. We feel more comfortable when we can see potential threats. Even when no threats exist." Kryvex asked. "Old habits die hard," Susan explained. "For thousands of years, humans lived in dangerous environments. Those who watched their surroundings survived to pass on their genes. Those who didn't, well, they became someone's dinner. Kryvex leaned forward with interest. So this is defensive positioning. Exactly, Susan said. Most humans do it unconsciously. Military personnel, security officers, and those with anxiety tend to be more deliberate about it. We call it the cop seat in restaurants, the position that lets you see all the doors. As they continued talking, Kryvex discreetly recorded every word. This information would fascinate Commander Zex Lorith, and perhaps worry him too. Commander Zex Lorith stood motionless as Kryvex presented her findings to the Valdurian High Command. The room was silent except for her clear voice as she explained what she had learned about humans. Their entire history is marked by constant threats, Kryvex said, gesturing to images of Earth's prehistoric predators. Lions, bears, wolves. Humans were prey for thousands of years before they developed tools and became hunters themselves. One of the older commanders interrupted, his purple eyes narrowing. But that was their ancient past. They are a spacefaring civilization now. Yet the instincts remain, Kryvex replied. Here is the key difference between our species. We evolved as unchallenged apex predators. Nothing on our world ever hunted us. We never needed to watch our backs. She switched to a comparison of Valdurian and human brain scans. Humans have dedicated neural pathways for threat detection. Their eyes constantly scan their surroundings, even when they feel safe. They call it situational awareness. Zex Lorith finally spoke. So when humans choose the back row, it's not submission, Kryvex confirmed. It's tactical advantage. They can see everyone while keeping their vulnerable backs protected. The chamber erupted in discussion. Some commanders argued this showed humans were naturally fearful and weak. Others suggested it proved they were calculating and potentially dangerous. Zex Lorith raised a hand for silence. What you're saying is that humans are always watching, always planning escape routes, always searching for threats, even in supposedly peaceful situations. Yes, Commander, Kryvex answered. And those they send as representatives, like Ambassador Miller and Security Officer Gardner, are exceptionally skilled at it. Meanwhile, John Miller noticed the increased attention from the Valdurians. Every meeting now included at least 3 high-ranking Valdurian officials who observed the humans closely. John maintained his calm exterior, but inside he grew concerned. He called Daniel Carter to his office. The xenobiologist arrived carrying a data pad filled with notes. The Valdurians have been accessing all my research on human evolution, Daniel said without preamble. They're particularly interested in our predator-prey history. John sighed. Do you think they see it as a weakness? Daniel shook his head. That's what worries me. I think they're starting to see it as a strength, one they don't possess. Across the station, Lisa Gardner met with Alan Park in a training room. They spoke quietly while pretending to inspect equipment. Security protocols have changed, Lisa noted. The Valdurians used to post guards at entrances only. Now they're placing them in corners with good sightlines. Ellen nodded grimly. They're copying us, learning from us. But why? Lisa asked. Maybe they realize what they've been missing, Alan suggested. Think about it. They've never needed to watch their backs. What happens when a species with that kind of blind spot rules the galaxy? In her private lab, Kryvex reviewed Earth's military history. The patterns were clear now. Human generals almost always established command posts with protected rear positions. Human ships patrolled in formations that protected vulnerable areas. Human soldiers were trained to constantly scan their surroundings. She prepared her final report for Commander Zex Lorith with a sense of urgency. The implications were too important to ignore. When Zex Lorith read the report, he sat alone in his quarters for a long time. The human's back row preference wasn't a quirk or a sign of timidity. It was the result of millions of years of evolution in a dangerous world. It gave them an awareness that Valdurians lacked. Computer, he said finally, access the station's security records. Show me footage of the humans during last week's emergency drill. The screen lit up with images of the minor hull breach drill. While most species panicked or followed procedures sluggishly, the humans had responded with remarkable calm. Lisa Gardner had moved with particular efficiency, helping others while constantly checking escape routes. Zexloreth's eyes narrowed. "They were ready," he murmured. "They're always ready." He tapped a communication panel. "Prepare a special test for our human guests. I need to see these skills in action." Not everyone in the Valdurian military agreed with Commander Zexloreth's growing interest in humans. General Voskathar, the leader of the defense fleet, had watched the humans with increasing suspicion. Standing nearly 8 feet tall with battle scars across his silver skin, Voskathar was known for his direct approach to problems. "These humans are deceptive," he told his inner circle of officers. "They hide in the back, watching us, planning who knows what. We must see their true nature." Captain Miklar, his most loyal officer, nodded in agreement. "How shall we proceed, General?" "A test," Voskathar replied. "During tomorrow's full council meeting, we will create a situation that forces them to reveal themselves." The next day, the council chamber was more crowded than usual. All 247 member species had representatives present for a vote on new trade regulations. John Miller sat in his customary back row seat, with Lisa Gardner standing at her usual position against the wall. John leaned slightly toward Daniel Carter, who had joined him for this meeting. "Is it just me, or are there more Valdurian military officers than usual today?" Daniel nodded subtly. "I counted 12. Normally there are only 4 or 5. Lisa's eyes continually scanned the room, noting positions, behaviors, and the unusual tension in the Valdurian guards. Something felt wrong, but she couldn't identify what. 2 hours into the meeting, it happened. A loud explosion shook the far side of the chamber. Alarms blared as smoke poured from a vent. The chamber's lights flickered and went out, replaced by dim emergency lighting. "Hull breach in Sector 7. A voice announced over the speakers. "Emergency evacuation required." Chaos erupted as representatives panicked. Some species began pushing toward the main doors, creating dangerous bottlenecks. Others froze in their seats, unsure what to do. Lisa's training kicked in immediately. "Ambassador, this way," she said calmly, moving to John's side. But John was already on his feet, helping a small Pranix delegate who had fallen in the commotion. "We need to clear these side exits," he called to Lisa. "The main doors will be jammed." Lisa nodded and moved with purpose, not panic. She had memorized the chamber's layout, including all 6 emergency exits. She began directing people toward the least crowded paths. "Follow me," she told a group of frightened delegates from smaller worlds. "Stay together and keep moving." Daniel joined in, helping a floating tank containing an aquatic delegate move toward the nearest exit designed for their kind. Throughout the chamber, hidden cameras recorded everything. In a secure room nearby, General Voskathar and Commander Zexloreth watched the unfolding scene. "See how quickly they responded," Zexloreth noted. "No hesitation. No confusion about which exits to use." Voskathar's eyes narrowed. "Because they had already planned escape routes, just as I suspected." On the screens, they watched as Lisa efficiently guided not just the human delegation, but several other species to safety. She checked corners before turning, held others back when paths became too crowded, and constantly kept count of her group. "Look at Security Officer Gardner," Zexloreth said. "She's not just escaping. She's helping others while maintaining complete awareness of her surroundings." The general grunted. "A trained soldier. Of course she knows evacuation procedures." "But Ambassador Miller and Dr. Carter show the same awareness," Zexloreth pointed out. "They're civilians, yet they move with similar purpose." As the evacuation continued, John Miller noticed something odd. Some of the emergency lights were functioning perfectly in areas that should have lost power if there had been a real hull breach. He caught Lisa's eye and saw that she had noticed too. "This is a drill," he whispered as they guided their group through a corridor. "Or a test." Lisa nodded slightly. "Keep moving as if it's real." Someone's watching. When all delegates had been evacuated to safe zones, the alarms suddenly stopped. The regular lights came back on, and a station-wide announcement declared, "Emergency drill complete. All personnel return to normal duties." In the monitoring room, Commander Zexlorith turned to General Voskathar with a satisfied expression. "Now do you understand? The human's back-row preference isn't deception or weakness. It's tactical awareness, and we need to learn from it." The general was not convinced, or perhaps they simply passed the first test. The day after the emergency drill, Commander Zexlorith sent an official request to meet with Ambassador Miller. The message included an unusual invitation. "Your presence is requested at the Valdurian Sacred Arena for a formal challenge." John read the message twice, then called his team together. "What exactly is the Sacred Arena?" he asked Daniel. The xenobiologist pulled up information on his tablet. "It's a ceremonial space where Valdurians historically settled disputes and tested worthiness. Not physical combat in the human sense, but more like complex challenges to demonstrate skills." Lisa frowned. "Sounds like a trap." Alan Park leaned forward. "Maybe, but refusing would look like weakness. The Valdurians respect willingness to face challenges." John nodded slowly. "Then we accept, but carefully." 2 days later, John arrived at the Sacred Arena accompanied by his team. The space was enormous, a circular room with rising tiers of seats surrounding a central platform. Hundreds of Valdurians watched silently as the humans entered. Commander Zexlorith stood in the center, flanked by General Voskathar and Kryvex. Their silver skin gleamed under the bright lights. "Ambassador Miller," Zexlorith called out, his voice carrying through the vast space. "Thank you for accepting our invitation." John stepped forward. "The people of Earth are honored by your challenge, Commander." Zexlorith's purple eyes gleamed. "We have prepared what we call the Trial of Perspectives, a series of scenario simulations designed to test strategic thinking and awareness." The commander explained that the trial would present complex diplomatic and tactical situations through immersive holographic technology. The participant would need to navigate these scenarios, demonstrating their decision-making process. "Who among you will represent humanity in this challenge?" General Voskathar asked, his tone suggesting he expected John himself to step forward. John turned and gestured to a figure standing quietly behind him. "Frank Wells will be Earth's representative." A murmur ran through the Valdurian audience. Frank was an unassuming man of average height with kind eyes behind simple glasses. As the junior diplomat on John's team, he had rarely spoken in official meetings. General Voskathar's disappointment was obvious. "This is your champion, not yourself or your security officer." "Frank is exceptionally qualified for this particular challenge," John replied confidently. Frank stepped forward without fear. He had been quietly observing the Valdurians for weeks from his back row positions. No one had paid much attention to him, exactly as he preferred. Commander Zexlorith explained the rules. "You will face 5 scenarios. Each requires you to assess the situation, identify potential threats or opportunities, and make decisions. Your thought process must be spoken aloud for all to hear." Frank nodded. "I understand." The first scenario began as the arena darkened and holographic images formed around Frank. He found himself in a diplomatic reception with representatives of 12 different species. Hidden tensions and alliances existed among them. "Identify the most dangerous individual in this room," came the instruction. The Valdurians watched carefully as Frank's eyes methodically scanned the scene. He didn't rush to look at the obviously armed guards or the physically imposing delegates. "The danger isn't the Krell ambassador with the visible weapon," Frank explained calmly. "It's the Dovan representative by the refreshment table. He's positioned himself to see everyone while appearing casual. He's wearing ceremonial robes that could hide multiple weapons, and he's staying close to 3 different exit points." General Voskathar looked surprised. "Correct. How did you know?" "Because it's what I would do if I were planning something," Frank replied simply. As the scenarios continued, Frank demonstrated remarkable awareness, consistently identifying hidden threats and opportunities that even experienced Valdurian officers missed. In the observation booth, Kryvex leaned toward Commander Zexalorith. "He's even better than we expected. How did Ambassador Miller know to choose him?" "Because Miller understands what we're testing," Zexalorith replied. "And he chose the human who embodies these skills most strongly." On the arena floor, Frank completed the fourth scenario with perfect scores. The final and most difficult challenge was about to begin. The final challenge began with a deep hum as the holographic projectors created a perfect replica of the Galactic Council chamber. Frank stood in the center, surrounded by lifelike images of delegates from all member species. "This scenario tests more than observation," Commander Zexalorith announced. "It measures adaptation to changing circumstances." Without warning, the scene shifted. Walls moved, delegates changed positions, and hidden threats appeared and disappeared rapidly. Frank needed to constantly reassess his surroundings as the environment transformed. The Valdurians watched with growing respect as Frank responded with calm efficiency. He never appeared confused or lost, always maintaining awareness of exits, threats, and safe positions. After 20 minutes of increasingly difficult changes, the simulation ended. The arena was silent as the lights came back up. Even General Voskathar looked impressed. "How did you manage to keep track of everything?" Kryvex asked Frank. The final simulation was designed to overwhelm even Valdurian elite guards. Frank smiled slightly. "I grew up as the smallest kid in a rough neighborhood. You either learn to watch everything or you get hurt. I learned to always know where the exits are, who might be a threat, and how to position myself for quick escape if needed." "So this is not special training?" General Voskathar asked with surprise. "Not formal training, no," Frank replied. "Though my diplomatic training enhanced these skills, but most humans develop some version of this awareness naturally." Commander Zexalorith stepped forward. "Would you explain why humans choose the back row in meetings? We have our theories, but I wish to hear it directly." Frank looked to John, who nodded his permission. "It's simple, really," Frank began. "When you sit in the back, you can see everyone in the room. You know who's paying attention, who's having side conversations, who seems agitated. You can watch body language and reactions. You also have a clear view of all entrances and exits." He paused, then continued. "Humans don't choose the back row out of fear or disrespect. We do it because millions of years of evolution taught us that survival often depends on seeing the whole picture. It's not about being timid. It's about being prepared." Commander Zexalorith's eyes showed new understanding. In Valdurian culture, the most powerful take center position to be seen by all. We never considered the advantage of seeing all instead. "Different evolutionary paths," Frank said. "You never had to watch your backs because nothing hunted you. Humans had many predators. Those who weren't constantly aware didn't survive to pass on their genes." The commander turned to address the assembled Valdurians. "Today we have witnessed something significant. Not just a human passing our trials, but a demonstration of a different kind of strength, one our species has never needed to develop." General Voskathar, though still appearing somewhat suspicious, nodded reluctantly. "The human's performance cannot be denied. Perhaps there is value in this back row perspective." Later, as the human delegation prepared to leave the arena, Commander Zexalorith approached John privately. "Your choice of representative was excellent, Ambassador Miller. How did you know Wells would perform so well?" John smiled. "Frank always sits in the very back corner of every meeting. He speaks rarely, but when he does, his observations are remarkably insightful. He sees patterns others miss. Because he watches everything," Zexalorith realized. "Exactly. In human military history, we have a saying, 'The quiet ones see the most.' Frank has the most developed situational awareness on my team." As they walked out, Kryvex joined Commander Zexalorith. "What are you thinking, Commander?" I'm thinking we have much to learn from these humans, he replied thoughtfully. Their back row perspective gives them insights we've never considered. It's not a weakness as General Voskathar believed. It may be their greatest strength. Kryvex watched the humans leave, noting how even now they moved in a formation that protected their backs. Should we be concerned? Not concerned, Zexlorith said. Inspired. 1 week after Frank's impressive performance in the Vuldurian trials, Commander Zexlorith requested an extraordinary session of the Galactic Council. All 247 member species sent representatives, curious about the unusual meeting. John Miller arrived with his team and moved toward their usual back row seats. To their surprise, they found Commander Zexlorith waiting for them there. Ambassador Miller, the commander, greeted them. May I join you in the back row today? John blinked in surprise but nodded. Of course, Commander. As the council chamber filled, many noticed the unusual sight of the highest-ranking Vuldurians sitting in the back row with the humans. Whispers spread throughout the room. When the session began, the head of the council called on Commander Zexlorith to explain why he had called this special meeting. Zexlorith stood, his tall figure commanding attention even from the back of the room. Honored representatives, he began, I have spent 10,000 cycles serving the Vuldurian Dominion and the Galactic Council. In all that time, I believe I understood what made a species powerful. He gestured around the chamber. We Vuldurians have always taken the center position, the front row, the most visible spot. It is our way. We evolved as apex predators, never hunted, never threatened. We show our strength by being seen. The commander looked at the humans beside him. But recently, I have learned there are different kinds of strength, different perspectives born from different evolutionary paths. He explained what the Vuldurians had discovered about human behavior, their tendency to choose positions with walls at their backs, their constant awareness of their surroundings, their ability to see patterns and potential threats that others missed. When humans first joined our council and chose the back row, many thought it was a sign of weakness or timidity. Zexlorith continued. Now I understand it is tactical awareness, a strength my own species lacks. Murmurs filled the chamber as representatives of other species nodded in recognition. Many had noticed human positioning behavior, but hadn't understood its significance. Therefore, the commander announced, I propose a historic alliance between the Vuldurian Dominion and Earth. Our strengths complement each other. Where we have power and resources, they have perspective and awareness. General Voskathar stepped forward from his front row seat. For a moment, tension filled the room. Would he object? Instead, he spoke in support. As military leader, I value advantage, he said simply. The human back row perspective offers advantages we have never considered. I support this alliance. John Miller stood to respond. On behalf of Earth, we accept this alliance and the recognition of our complementary strengths. We have much to learn from each other. As the council voted unanimously to approve the alliance, Kryvex approached John with an unusual request. Ambassador, we would like to send Vuldurian officers to train with humans, to learn this situational awareness that comes so naturally to your kind. John smiled. And perhaps some of our people could learn from your confidence in taking center stage when needed. In the weeks that followed, changes spread throughout the station. The council chamber was redesigned into a circular format with no front or back rows, only equal positions where all could see and be seen. Other species began adopting human security protocols. The phrase taking the human position entered galactic diplomatic language, meaning to step back and observe the whole situation before making decisions. Lisa Gardner was appointed to train a mixed-species security force, teaching techniques of awareness and positioning that humans had developed over millennia. Daniel Carter and Kryvex established a joint research team studying how evolution shapes behavior across different worlds. And at the next major council session, John Miller found himself no longer sitting in the back row, because there was no back row anymore. Instead, he sat beside Commander Zexlorith in a circle of equals, each with their own perspective to contribute. As John looked around at the transformed council, he thought about how something as simple as choosing a seat had led to greater understanding between species. The human's instinct to take the back row, once seen as strange, had ultimately changed how the galaxy's most powerful species viewed strength itself.